So we're in my apartment in New Bedford, Massachusetts. We've only been here for like 3 weeks, and I went to New York twice and LA once, so I've only been here for like a week. It's different. It's nice though. I mean, everyone was a little bit shocked, I think, when I decided to come here. But for me, it's kind of the same thing we've been talking about, right? It's about chasing that learning. It's a little hood around here if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, no, I noticed.
So this is it here. This brick building, it's the old firehouse.
Oh shit.
Jeff bought it and turned it into his factory.
Full
So
place.
yeah, basically the whole place.
Jeez.
My brother's a truck driver. My other brother is going to take over our family farm. I was always very different, you know. Basketball was the answer for me. You know, all of our TV was from Detroit, all of our radio was from Detroit, so we had very much that, you know, culture in us, even though we were in Canada. So I always knew I wanted to go to the States, and the basketball scholarship was like the only way I was going to do that. When I did the trip at Columbia, it was like incredible. I'd never been to a city before, not one like that, not New York. And they didn't even really show you campus. It was just like, took you to Times Square, took you to Madison Square Garden, and it was like, wow, I couldn't believe this place, you know. Part of what allowed me to create the blog, which resonated with a lot of people, was that I lived a lot of different lifestyles and cultures, right? And come from very rural farm background, and kind of went straight from that to like really inner city basketball, playing in Detroit life, which those are very different. And then go to an Ivy League college, which is very different than both of those things, in New York, which is its own animal. And then somehow fall into the fashion business, which is another crazy experience, and the personalities in there are very different than all those other arenas. And now my next chapter is like moving to Massachusetts to work in a factory. I feel more like I can like talk to my dad about it because I'm like in a factory building things that like make tangible sense, you know? My mom grew up making her own clothes, basically because she had to. So she was always the fashionable one, still is. She's like super fly on a budget, you know? So I was always into clothes, and in college, because it was in New York, when you're into clothes and you move to New York, you get way more into clothes because it's like a clothes capital. Everyone's dressing well, the stores are everywhere. So while I was in New York, the fashion bug really hit hard. So I started trying to dress better. You know, I was obviously the fashion guy on the basketball team, you know, like I stood out. So I became that go-to guy for like all my teammates, basically. A lot of these guys don't come from New York, so they were kind of clueless like me. And it was like I was trying to help them pick stuff out. We're going out on a Saturday night. What should I wear? Hey, I just got some money for my birthday. I want to go shopping. What should I buy? So I was like, before blogs, it was like you would ask your like most stylish friend, and I was that guy. So and the blogging thing had just taken off. It was like no one had a menswear blog. So I was like, at some point, I was like, instead of coming to all your rooms and helping you pick out outfits and give you all this information like one at a time, I'm just gonna write it down. You guys can read this if you want. I don't care. And my girlfriend at the time saw an Esquire ad or something that was like, are you the best dressed man in America? And she was like, let me take pictures of you and your outfits around campus and I could submit them to this contest. And yeah, we did that. I wrote the whole website for I think over a year anonymously. Like I didn't want it to be about me. It was meant to be like stuff that I was learning about menswear just by poking around in New York or observing New York and just writing about it very like column style, you know? And I didn't want to put my name on purpose because it wasn't really about me. And then someone was like, well, why don't you show us a picture of what you're talking about? Wouldn't that be a lot more helpful? So this is like, I had a point and shoot in the mirror. It's like the first selfie I ever took. It's like an old, I didn't have a cell phone. And I just took it in the mirror and put it up. And yeah, it exploded. It was like people were ecstatic. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know what it looked like. So part of it was that. But also it was like, wow, now you're like actually creating photo and information. And I was like, obviously that's the way to go. And that was what led me to like hire my first photographer. But I was trying to sneak in these like quick photo shoots, you know, just like a lot of bloggers. I mean, you go to streets of Soho, there's people doing that everywhere now. Sure. The cameras are a lot nicer and they're doing a better job of it. Some of those old photos were just laughable. I mean, it's hard to look at that stuff now. But so I was just like, here, take this camera, take this picture of me. I know you think it's silly, but whatever, just do it. And then all of a sudden, you could tell through the comments and the statistics, you know, like the audience was growing. We were working hard. We were like carrying, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we filled up bags full of clothes and shoes and every little accessory, like the pin thing that changes your watch band was in a certain case. I'd pull that out in Central Park and put the right watch band on and put the collar pin on, and it was great. It was wild. Yeah, we were one of the biggest menswear sites at the time. There weren't many, and we had a big audience, so we were getting profiles on all kinds of people. I didn't know anything, like when I started the blog, I didn't know anything about fashion. I learned it by interviewing all the people that interest me at different positions. So when you meet a Nick Wooster, you're like, well, who's Nick? Like, who is that? What does he do for a living? And why is he good at it? And why, Junior year, I had an internship on Wall Street, and it was 2008, so everyone was getting fired. There was no hiring going on at that time. I wasn't getting that job no matter what. But what I learned, I fell in love with this bespoke suit idea, because all these guys, like, it was like the Wolf of Wall Street. They're all wearing like crazy pinstripe. I was like, wow, this is cool. So I met a guy there who noticed that I was way more into the clothing on the trading floor than the numbers on the trading floor, which was way over my head. I was like way in too deep. So he was like, dude, why are you here? Like they were giving me packets to read and I was like throwing them in the trash. Like I was just like, nah. I didn't have the mind for the markets. I was like the intern wearing cufflinks and like banker collars and like suits and shit. I sold everything on, I was like buying and selling stuff on eBay in college to like get fresh outfits for the photos, but also to like make a little cash before the banner ads really picked up. So I sold everything on eBay. I went to buy suits. Like I was supposed to buy one bespoke suit from Mike, and I convinced him to let me buy 4, which like he came down on the initial deposit. So I gave all the money I had for only the 50% upfront deposit, thinking like, oh, hustle, man. I got 6 weeks to my final fitting. I'll scrounge up the money somehow, whatever. I didn't have anything left to sell on eBay. So when I came back to him, like a tail between my legs, I couldn't pay the second half. So I had to work for him.
Do you remember what the suits were that you got?
Oh yeah, I still have them. I got an essential navy, like a 4-season navy blue go-to suit. I got a charcoal, very similar, like a nail head, had like a little kind of like heather on it. I got a tan cotton for the summer, and I got a flannel with a heavy chalk stripe for the winter. The timing of all this was just like perfect, because that actually happened before we took the photos for Esquire. So, blogging to internship to holy shit bespoke suit, to paying way too much and not being able to pay it off, to working them off, to taking those photos. So the reason I won Esquire magazine's Best Dressed Man in America is because I was a college student who had 4 bespoke suits that weren't paid off yet. But I was like styling them up different ways. I was wearing like the gray pants with the navy top and like putting the, like we do now on the site basically, right? So showing that like with these 4 suits and a handful of shirts and polos or whatever, I was just like mixing all these outfits up. I was Michael's longest appointment ever too. I was there all day. They bought me lunch and dinner, and we had a drink after. So like I was there for like 7 hours, which is a night. Like if someone tried to do that to me, I would have kicked them out like way early, like after lunch. I'd been like, all right, time to go. So I was asking every possible question I could think of, like anything I didn't understand. I was just like, what about this? Like starting from really dumb questions. Like I didn't know how things were sewn. I didn't know how fabric was made. I didn't know anything. So I was like, I'm gonna use this opportunity. Like if I'm gonna spend more than all the money I have, I'm gonna get, something out of this. I'm gonna learn as much as I can. At the very least, that's what I'm gonna get out of this. So the whole time working in the bespoke shop, I started like sweeping the floors and like getting lunch. And then I was, doing client appointments, doing sales, showing guys fabrics. And then I was measuring and then doing fittings. And eventually I was like running all the fittings. Meanwhile, I'm running the blog on the side, which is getting very popular at this time and more work. Because blogs had kind of like grown now. Now there was like collaborations were a thing. There were brands trying to do sponsored content. I remember like telling guys to like putting guys in the fitting room and telling them just like, put the suit on, check it out, look in the mirror for a few minutes, like just like really digest it. Meanwhile, I'm running to the bathroom, like taking a conference call with like Calvin Klein reps about like, hey, they didn't really like this photo, but you got to do this, and like selling ad deals, And it was just like, it got to a point where I couldn't do both. The blog is suffering now because we have so much interest in mainly sponsorships and different collaborations. Like there was press and speaking arrangements and all kinds of different things happening that needed attention, So at that point I was like, I got to go all in. Like it's making enough cash now that I can live off it. And I didn't really know what it was going to be, but I knew that it left a lot of doors open, and the more I could grow this platform, then I'll be able to do whatever I want with it. In that time, I also went back to school. So after Columbia, I took a year and then did a 2-year program at FIT. So that was probably the most intense 2 years, because I was working full-time at the bespoke shop doing measuring and fitting. I was doing the menswear design program, which was so much work, like harder than Columbia was. And I was running the blog all at the same time. So they both fed into the blog nicely, but it was still just a lot to manage, I was going from like writing articles to meeting with clients to doing sales to doing fittings to doing sewing homework to doing pattern making homework. So like my whole day was very compact and busy, but it all had to do with the same stuff. So now it was like, secretly having the alterations tailors do some of my sewing homework and like telling the clients the stuff I was learning in school, which was like new to the business, and like I was really excelling, right? My whole day was like all menswear related, but every kind of like facet of it, from like in-person, face-to-face, digital, alterations, manufacturing, the whole gambit, Like I showed an alligator skin being cut the other day.
Oh yeah.
People don't really care about alligators as much. Like hiring someone is like the last thing you want to do, If you absolutely need them, then you hire them. It's a mouth you got to feed all the time. You got to pay the salary every week. And if you don't pay them, you're going to know right away. It's not optional. It's like owning a factory, right? Like it would dramatically change our economics on a garment per garment unit basis, right? We would stop paying a factory a price to make something and sell it at a different price. We would now be paying hourly to the sewers. But if we didn't get any orders for a week, we're still hourly paying these sewers, right? Regardless. So like those are all salary positions that you can't not pay, regardless of if you're making revenue or not. So you really want to just not have to hire people. And if you are small and trying to grind it out and you're hiring people, you need them to be like extraordinarily multi-talented. I mean, think about what our guys do. I got guys who can understand our digital strategy, who can take sales appointments, who can model the clothing, who can take investor meetings, who can, you know what I mean? Like these are guys that from creative to business to looking the part and dressing the part and having that swagger, they have all of that. So it's easier to say, okay, come on my team because you're gonna do all of these things and do them pretty well. Well, now you can grow, we all do all kinds of different things all the time. Because our business is multifaceted in that we do content, we do tech and digital, and we do clothing, and we're trying to get into the manufacturing space on our own side too. So yeah, I got blessed with like phenomenal guys. The way the timeline there works is Wes was always kind of part of the squad, when we were just building content. But then when we moved to LA, when we kind of got sick of the paid posts, it was like, we got to get out of New York, let's move to LA and we'll figure out what we want to do over there. Because one of my best friends in college, Pat Foley, was working at Google with Will. They both wanted to leave their job, didn't know what they wanted to do. This was like two of the smartest guys I knew. They were in San Fran thinking about moving to LA. And I was like, I gotta rethink my whole thing. I had this following and this, this content brand, but I didn't know where it was going. So I wanted to link up with them and figure out like, how are we gonna bring this to a new place,
How did that BuzzFeed video go, by the way?
That was huge.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah, I probably got 8 million views or something like that.
Oh shit.
It was huge for us just because we needed a third-party review.
Right.
So if you can get like someone like you, someone who can come in and say, we're not associated with this brand, we're going to try this product and compare it to others, that's what you need. It'd be nice to be a full-time content creator like that,
Absolutely.
But it did huge for us, and it definitely brought us business. And the thing about a video like that is that it lives forever. So there are people watching that right now, It's the gift and the curse, though, because the negative stuff is the same bet, right? I was wearing the suits that I was designing at Michael Andrews for myself, just because I loved suits and I worked there. So I had a certain number of suits I could have every year. And I wore those on the blog and talked about those, so people wanted to buy those, right, naturally. Of course, I couldn't sell those. Didn't have a way to sell online. And I would tell guys, when you come to New York, come see me at Michelangelo's. I'll hook you up. I'll show you the fabric, measure you up. Boom, it's great. So that was the first, people were literally asking to buy the custom products from us online, and we didn't have a way to deliver them. Combine that with we were reviewing suits from every single online custom tailor, and they were always trash. So it was like, why is it so good at Michelangelo's or the in-person experience so good and the online experience so bad? Like, why can't we be 90% of what you get in person online? Like, why couldn't we just actually do what you'd get in person online? Because what was happening online was very different, right? The in-person experience was like, you go to experts. You go to guys like me who live their life for this shit and are gonna measure you, do your fittings, help you pick the right fabric, help you put pieces together, help you plan a wardrobe. Like, that's the service that's what we do for a living. But online, it was like none of that. There's no service, there's no experts, all it is like an algorithm to let you measure yourself and send that to some overseas factory and get a suit. That was it. There was no styling consultation. There was no one like telling you if it actually did fit well. The original concept, like I said, was apply the in-person bespoke online. But on top of that, it was like solve all the problems with it too, right? One problem, for example, is like way too many options, right? You say, hey, we got 10,000 fabrics, 1,000 linings, colored buttonhole. I mean, the options are endless. Guys are just like, they have paralysis, right? They can't make decisions. So our first collection was like 10 suits, and you couldn't design them. You just bought them as they were, because we're trying to take the kind of designer concept, walk into Gucci, that's dope, I want that, but with the fitting. So that experience, but we will fit it for you too, no matter what size you are, because not everyone can walk into Gucci. You probably have a hard time walking into Gucci, right? Really small guys, really big guys, they can't do that. So it was really just about creating a designer product that you can just look at and be like, that's what I want. But adding the fitting. So we weren't really custom menswear in the custom sense. When we launched, of course, we got so many questions, emails, feedbacks, and a lot of those guys, they wanted to design the products, right? There was a suit that was double-breasted. The guy said, I want that fabric, but I just want it single-breasted. We're not going to pass up a sale because of that, right? Then there was a guy that said, I love this fabric. Do you have it in a different color? Do you have a green linen? And we do have all these things. So all of a sudden we like tried to simplify the process, but got all these requests for different things. So now we started to like pepper them in, and it got more and more complicated and more complicated. And then we kind of lost our way. We started adding like swatches, like tons of swatches. At one point we had like 500 different swatches on the site. And when you look at the results, again, you're learning the whole time, right? You look at the results and like, what are people actually buying? They're 90% of the time they're buying the original collection that is how it's designed, because they don't care. They don't want to do that work. They don't think they're going to design something better than I can because they've been following the content. They believe that what we're doing is, that we have done the research and know what we're doing. In the future, our world is like blended in such a way that the content page and the product page are virtually the same. So when you're at the point of purchase, you're getting all the information that you could want or need about that product. It's like multiple outfits, all the close-up photos, all the where it's made, how it's made, a video of how it's made, a video of a person walking. Like, you're really getting a full experience of a product digitally. The internet experience doesn't have to be worse. It could be better, right? That's what I think a lot of people miss, is that when a customer walks into a bespoke clothing store, they're looking at swatches, right? They're looking at the guy showing them the swatches, what he's wearing. They're looking at maybe a few mannequins, maybe a few hanging pieces. Most of the time, they're not actually looking at what they're going to buy, right? Whereas with digital, what you can do is show you really well what that product looks like, moves like, drapes like. So we can give you 30 high-res photos, photo of the inside, photo everything, Whereas in person, you're just getting a swatch. So again, it'll get better. There's always going to be, people are rendering fabrics now, and you scan them, and it applies to a thing that looks kind of real. And the problem with that is you just don't get any drape, It's like when the video game character wears a coat, it's like you don't say, I want that coat. And you're like, oh, that coat looks blocky as fuck,
Right.
The try-on garment is so critical because it gives us your preference. And there's no other way to really get that, right? I mean, I can take your body measurements. Like we have, 20% of our orders come from guys coming into New York. Those guys get measured, right? We use those measurements to make the try-on garments. And when I do that fitting in the try-on garment, it's not even close, right? It's really bad a lot of times. Even though it's cut to his measurements, it's not adjusted for him in any way. So you see a lot of things like collar gaps and breaking and no shoulder adjustments, and his torso is longer than his legs and you can't really measure that. And so I know what the product would look like if we just measured guys and made suits. And it wouldn't be very good. The try-ons very rarely look perfect, right? But most importantly, you're getting that guy's personal preference. Because one guy's tight as another guy's loose. So just having his measurements and making him a suit, you're doing the allowance on that deal, right? So if I measure you, I'm saying, okay, we need allowance is like the difference between your body measurements and what the coat measurements would be. So if I measure your chest, I usually give you about 4-inch allowance. So if you're a 42-inch chest, your jacket's actually gonna be 46 around. But all those allowances are numbers that I make up for your body type, but to my fit preference. So I'm gonna give you, based on your body type, the fit that I think is best for you, taking into account your profile, because some guys will write, I like my stuff looser, tighter, shorter, whatever. But I'm already taking a custom cut at you, at your measurements, at your body type. When you get that fitting garment, now I'm getting all this other feedback that I didn't know about. Feels tight in the back. I like a higher armhole. I don't like as much shirt showing on my sleeves. I like no break in my pants. Just having measurements doesn't tell you that story at all. Like if Indochino, you're self-measuring, the risk there is enormous. Like the chance that you're going to get that right is going to be very hard, right? So you're starting down a path that is very rocky. Whereas in our process, we have a team of experts, including myself, who read your feedback. Rather than you try to be an expert and measure yourself, you're telling experts about the problems you've had with clothing, what your sizes are, your height and your weight. So us being able to dissect that info and create a fit that is customized to you, obviously the more info you tell us, the better, but that should create a better result for our fitting garment than you would get trying to self-measure. So the try-on garment, which is a very traditional bespoke way of doing it, allows me to have a conversation with you about like, this is what I cut for your body, how's it feel, what do you like, and let me review like how it looks. And that's what I mean by taking the traditional in-person bespoke and applying it online. It's that service. Like the big vision at the moment, and this changes all the time, is like farm to table clothing. It's like we control the whole process. I don't know if we'll have a sheep farm. It's possible. That would be fully full circle for me. But that concept of like, we are making everything here for you and including you in the process in such a way.